Today is Wednesday, June 30th, 2021, and we will call the meeting to order at 5:35 p.m. with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Agenda item number 2 are school committee member introductions.
Bruce Damon, Ward 1.
Janet Bowden, Ward 2.
Kiernan Majoris Collins, Ward 3. My pronouns are he, him, his.
Jake Lang, the superintendent. I would usually be sitting in that chair next to Chair Parks. I am in recovery from a bit of a procedure, but I am with you here tonight remotely.
Megan Parks, Ward, at large.
Tanya Whitlow, Ward 4.
Linnea Hawkins, Ward 5.
Ron Potvin, Ward 6.
Paul Beauplant, Ward 7.
And Miss Ray will be joining us shortly. Agenda item number 3 is to receive a presentation from JROTC students. Jake, do you want to do the introduction?
Yeah, absolutely. We recently approved a field trip that I think came with a bit of hesitation because of some historic events. But I'm happy to share that the field trip went very well. We did have 2 cadets that were going to join us tonight. One became unavailable, but tonight we have Cadet Karen, should be in person, who is able to share a bit about their experience. We also have Colonel Mark Wellborn joining remotely. Is Cadet Karen in the audience?
Yes, he's at the mic now. Do you want to move the camera on him? Oh, the camera on him, I meant. Oh, okay. Sorry.
Colonel Wellborn, if you'd like to join to share anything, you're free to do so.
Yes, I guess I'll start here to icebreak a little for Cadet Karen. Thank you again, ladies and gentlemen, for allowing this field trip for our cadets. Talia Visconti, again, is unavailable this evening. Unfortunately, she's working. But Richard will answer your questions. I think he was very enthusiastic. He was very excited. It was actually the first time that he has ever flown in an aircraft. And but one of the reasons he was chosen was because of his extreme his passion for aircraft and for flying. So that was one opportunity to promote that passion, and I think it paid off well for him. But I'll let him tell you that. Along with what he has, I have some pictures that I can share with you. Some that he took, some that Ms. Visconti took, some that I and some parents took about in regard to the flight that day on June 5th.
Hello, I'm Cadet Karen. I'm going actually on my 3rd year of JROTC. So a few, I believe, weeks ago, earlier in June, before school got out, I had the opportunity to go fly in a Cessna 182 with the Civil Air Patrol with a fellow cadet who is not here, sadly. So today, pretty much, we're going to be showing you a little some pictures we took and talking about it pretty much. But it was my first time ever flying an airplane. I was quite nervous at first. I was surprisingly scared of the turbulence. I got used to it quite quickly, though. We flew from Lewiston Auburn Airport to Knox County Regional, and then we did a low flyer of Portland International. We did the harbor visual approach, and then we flew back to Lewiston Auburn. And Colonel, would you like to show us some of the pictures?
Yes. So I'll share my there we go. Okay, so There's Richard. He started out in the backseat of the aircraft. I'll let you narrate, sir, as I thumb through these photos.
Okay.
The pictures aren't visible to us.
Let's see. Oh, stand by.
Do you have the share button at the bottom of your screen?
Make sure I have that. I do not have it available. I do not have share available. Normally I would. Let me look. I do not have it available. I apologize. Can the host activate that for me?
Is he a panelist or an attendee? Oh, okay. All right. Do you have a button now? There you go.
There we go. All right, there we go. There we go. Okay, so let's start. There we go. Now you should be able to see my screen.
Yes.
There's the Cadet Karen initially. Let me do this. And Richard, I'll let you narrate as we go.
Okay, that is the cadet who flew with me. This is Talia Viscone. She started flying first. She flew all the way from Lewiston, Auburn. Once we hit about 1,000, I believe 500 feet. She flew from there all the way up to up near Owl's Head and all that. Next. There is both of us standing in front of the aircraft. As you can tell, there's a Civil Air Patrol aircraft in the background. Cessna 172, and yeah. Next.
Okay. It does not want to play that video, so we won't do that.
Okay.
Stand by. Oh,
If you click on the download button, it should play.
There we go. Okay, there is me and the cadet also standing next to Lieutenant Colonel Curtis. He was the pilot of the aircraft who allowed us to operate it and go for a ride with him. Next.
and Colonel Curtis is Civil Air Patrol Lieutenant Colonel. He's also retired Air Force B-52 pilot.
Right there is this is another shot. This is when we started our taxi, I believe. Or this could be our, I believe, refueling actually in that picture. So right there, if not wrong, forgot the exact airport, but that is one of the airports we did fly by. We did not land at that airport, but it was just a nice image, obviously. Here's a few more images. As you can tell, we flew over the ocean a little bit and over the mainland. And matter of fact, there's another one, if not wrong, that might be somewhere either in Portland. I believe that might be when we were coming into Portland. That's Owl's Head Lighthouse right there. We flew past that. There is Portland. Flew right through the harbor. Got a nice view of the ships and all that. Next. There is a front seat shot of the cockpit and the beautiful view, obviously. Next. There's another view. You can see a few sailing boats out there. Also, I believe this one's the lighthouse in Rockland where you can walk out at. I forgot the exact name of that one. Next. That one is a little bit blurry, sadly.
A little bit better there.
Yeah, that is also, there should be a schooner somewhere in that picture. I don't know exactly where. But yeah, that was another one when we were flying. Next. Okay, that one. We flew over, obviously, a nice little view there. You can see all the boats. It was very beautiful that day, as you can tell. There's just a more of a zoomed in one. Next.
And I think that was the last photo there.
Okay.
Yes, I think that was all of them that we had. Let me try one more time on that, that quick video. If that doesn't work, we will conclude.
Video. Okay.
So this was a taxi out, and they were taxiing out. Okay. So that was the photos that I had. The one thing that I would like to add, when they landed at Rockland, the students were able to switch seats, so they both got an opportunity to fly again, only when they were above 1,000 feet above the ground and no approaches or departures. But the pilot directed them, and he's also an instructor. When they landed at Rockland, Richard was in back and moved to the front. Miss Visconti had gotten out, and Colonel Curtis remarked that he's never seen quite the dramatic change in personality, because once she was outside the airplane, Talia Visconti is a very outward and excited young lady, and she couldn't stop the happy dance when she was after she got out of the aircraft. So her father has video of that somewhere, and I've tried to get a hold of it. I wanted to get a hold of it for you, but I wasn't able to. So she was very excited on the trip, and you can ask those questions of Cadet Karen as well. Does anybody have any questions for Cadet Karen? I'd be happy to hope that you do.
Member Potvin?
Well, congratulations on your first flight. I am interested in knowing, moving forward, do you have a passion for the military or more aviation or both? And what does this program do for you moving forward to get where you want to go?
My kind of plan for my life is I want to eventually get into law enforcement sometime, hopefully. But I also want to stick with the aviation at the same time. But this program, it helped me in many ways. It helps you like with study habits, getting you prepared for life, and pretty much it's just preparing you like and getting you ready for your future. And yeah, that's all pretty much.
Member Beaupont?
Yes, congratulations on a good experience there. And thank you, Colonel Wellborn, for putting this together. As the record shows, I was one of the committeemen that voted against this based on the past experience, but the positive results of this will impact future votes on issues such as this. Thank you. You seem to have represented Lewiston schools very well, and Colonel Wellborn, thank you for all the organization you did to make this such a success.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Anyone else? Okay, have a good night, everyone.
Member
Oh,
Whitlow has
go
a
ahead.
question.
So how long were you able to actually control the plane?
So I flew once we reached around 1,500 feet. After we took off from the Knox County Regional Airport, I got to fly from there all the way down into Portland. I got to bring the plane down to about 3,000 feet. Then he took over controls so we could go in for the low flyover of the one of the runways at Portland International. And then he pretty much flew from there to Lewiston. But I would say I probably flew for probably a good 45 minutes to maybe an hour. Same with the other cadets. So,
Were you mostly over land or water?
well, the first part, when we were flying to the Knox County Regional Airport, we were mainly over the land half the time. But on my part, since we were going into Portland, as you know, it's right along the coast. We were pretty much over water quite a bit of the time. Occasionally, we went over a little bit of land for the second part of the trip.
And Colonel Curtis briefed me that from the Knox County Airport in Rockland, they flew down the coast. So they were over both land and water at those times, right along the main coastline until they got to Portland.
This is really exciting. Thank you for sharing your experience with us. We appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you for the opportunity to allow Cadet Karen to pass that on. They enjoyed it immensely, and I hope to again be able to have other cadets have this experience in the future. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cadet Karen, thank you very much for coming to speak in person. I appreciate it.
Agenda item number 4, to recognize the dedication of Lewiston Public Schools nurses. Did you have an introduction, Jake?
I do.
Okay.
I don't know if they'll come up to the podium together as a group. All right, great. So this evening, we want to take an opportunity. Well, I think for some time, we want to take an opportunity to recognize our nurses who they've always been there every step of the way. But in this past 15 months or so have really been outstanding. I couldn't ask to work with a better group of people who have not just planned, but planned, adjusted, had the energy somehow to look ahead. Everything from contact tracing, communication, doing what was right all the time, even when you had to reach out to people that maybe didn't want to quarantine or hear the news that they had to quarantine, whether they were a close contact. But they stayed committed to their oath as nurses to carry out their work as medical professionals 24/7, 365 this past year plus. I think they know, and I know, because they would call me all hours of the day and night and weekends, holidays, you name it, with new situations that were popping up, and working through a situation that we had just never seen before, never had to work through before. But it takes a lot of good people to do what I think we did this year. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say to every nurse that's there, especially Wendy, who is our lead, and others who have stepped up throughout the year, that we trust you. We couldn't do it without you. And we thank you for everything that you've done and are continuing to do. Wendy's reached out to me, and we've stayed in communication since school got out to plan for next year. And so they've done what I think is saints work, and I really appreciate it. And I want to say, on behalf of Lewiston Public Schools, thank you very, very much. I wish I could be there in person.
Who has the certificates? And she's handing them out. You want to turn the mic on and just announce their names as you hand them out? Thank you.
Okay, I just handed Wendy her certificate. I got a Melissa Gendron. Okay. Delaney Sporl. Did I pronounce that right? Taylor Bollard. Luann Fournette. Adrienne Mercier. Melissa St. Pierre. Christine Watson. Nicole Trudell. Very nice. Debbie Bernier. Thank you all of you.
Thank you all for your amazing work during this crazy time. We appreciate it.
And before that too.
Yes, and before that, and in general, but especially right now. Thank you all. Do any of you want to speak? No? Okay. Any members of the school committee have anything?
Yeah, as a fellow public service member, certainly this last year has been extraordinary. And it required so many people to do things, didn't even know what it was going to be. And I just personally want to thank you I had a ton of positive feedback from parents for what you were doing. On a personal note, I had to go through 4 cardiologists this year on retirements. And I really wondered where the health field was going, dealing with COVID. People were beginning to leave and get burnt out. And I'm very pleased to see all of you to have the integrity to stay with it and make it happen and continue on and make it happen next year. Please, anything you need as far as resources go, do not hesitate to come and present to the council. You're an area of prime importance, and we'll respect that. Thank you.
Member Majoris Collins.
Want to echo Member Potvin's comments. We would not have gotten through this last school year here in Lewiston Public Schools as well as we did without your work. You know, you are integral to what we do here, and I hope that in the months and years ahead that this committee and future committees will keep that in mind when we have conversations about compensation and conversations about further investing in our students and staff health, because I think everyone on this committee understands how much you guys do, and really we should keep that in mind going forward.
Any other members care to comment? No. All right. Thank you all. We appreciate it.
Thank you all for coming.
We're going to go off script a little bit, off the agenda just briefly. So our Jake's, I don't know, do you want to speak first, Jake, or do you want me to just go?
Sure, if possible. Sue Turgeon, could you go up to the podium? He loves it when we do these things. So Sue is retiring. Sue is the assistant to the superintendent, part of the heartbeat of our school department. And kind of lead in by saying, you know, this year was very challenging, of course, but a lot of transitions at the leadership level, and certainly couldn't have happened without Sue. But last summer when I came on board, Sue said to me, I'm here to help you with anything you need. Knowing she's so knowledgeable, it helped me step into the opportunity when there was a pretty big gap that we were working to fill for Lewiston Public Schools. And about a week later, it hit me with things moving so quickly with the pandemic and transitions. I was thinking about things and moving forward, that Sue was retiring in September. I had known that for a little while. And I've known Sue for many years, many years. But in the role as superintendent, it's a bit like a marriage, working with your assistant. A person is only as good as the person right next to them, working with them. And I guess if this was more of a roast, Sue would prefer I use maybe different terminology, but I'll behave. I'm thinking that she's retiring in September, and then she says, I'll stay through the year to make sure everything's going like it should. And the truth is, there's a lot of pieces that of glue that hold everything together in a big organization like Lewiston Public Schools. But this year, Sue was perhaps the most essential piece. And when you talk about good people and working with good people, and then you think about the difference between good people and great people, you know, who says I'll stay one more year to help in a pandemic? She helps with institutional knowledge, processes, practices, work production, and is a cornerstone to the work that we did over the last year. Up to and including bringing on Cheryl Cornelio, who I think is going to be great. And she's had a couple weeks to work with Sue as part of the transition. And Sue will be retained for some things to help out as we work through our transition continuously. But Sue, I'd just like to say publicly, very, very fond of you and care deeply about you. A great work ethic, a great colleague, a great friend. And we couldn't have done any of this without you. Can't thank you enough. Happy retirement. And I will see you again soon. And for your many years of service to Lewiston Public Schools, and look forward to whatever you'll be doing as you retire or in retirement.
Thank you. And I don't need to say anything after all of that. So please. And Member Whitlow has a certificate from Lewiston Public Schools to acknowledge her, Sue's many years of dedication to our district. Thank you, so. Agenda item number 5, the COVID update regarding state guidelines. Superintendent Langless will present.
Yeah, I'll be brief on this one, but I'll entertain any questions, of course. We anticipate a return to normal essentially in the fall. The State Department of Education guidelines were released with some levels of requirements and recommendations, and then some of the language shifted by way of the governor. So we've actually begun summer school with the new language and recommendations. And today, being June 30th, was our first day without masks. And I heard some stories from summer school of kids with their masks really struggling the last couple of days because of the heat. And today they were able to, by rule, remove them. And so we'll continue to monitor things and make sure that we're following all the guidelines. Earlier this month, we met with the logistics group that had been created earlier in the spring. And I think a lot of people were very relieved that we're going to return to normal. We also started brainstorming ideas, and I know that we're planning internally for things in the fall to have more social emotional learning supports, efforts to get our kids back to school who might have disengaged over the pandemic, and other things to support staff. We're not naive that this will be a transition that, as we dive back into it, may be a challenge for some, and we want to make sure that we're doing good work around it. We are continuing to encourage vaccines, continuing to meet with medical partners, and looking for different options and plans to encourage vaccines, again, for only those that wish to do so. It's certainly not a mandate by any stretch. And we're working to share differences in the models for next year. Some folks have raised concerns or asked if there would be remote school options for all kids, pre-K through 12, and we just don't have the resources for that. Even if we have the funds, we don't have the staffing, and staffing is difficult, as many of you know, if not all of you, about the employee shortages we're seeing across all markets. So looking at returning to kind of normal in the fall, and we'll continue to plan over the summer to be ready for that.
Thank you. Questions? Member Madros Collins.
I appreciate the update, Superintendent Langless, and it's obviously very encouraging that we're moving towards a more normal school situation. I would say, though, that I hope that the district will look again at the prospect of providing remote learning for students who want it, who are not yet eligible for vaccination. The reality is, for those of us who are vaccinated, this pandemic is mostly behind us personally, but there remains a very large population of students in Lewiston who are not yet eligible for a vaccine. And I think that it's important that if their families want to keep them home until they become eligible, and hopefully that'll be by the end of the calendar year, that they be able to do that. So I would really encourage the administration to rethink that, and specifically for those 11 and under students who are not yet eligible, provide them that opportunity if they want to go that route.
Thank you. Member Bowden. It's going to be hard to get used to saying that.
Thank you. I'm actually really encouraged to hear that we're talking about going back to school 5 days a week as normal. I think that's the hope from most parents in this district. I do have a couple questions, and forgive me if this is stuff that you've already discussed. But I'm just wondering about, there are some classes, especially at the high school level, that have prerequisites to them. For example, I have a high schooler who has taken Algebra 1 and got cut off halfway through the year because of the pandemic, and took geometry and now is going into Algebra 2 without finishing Algebra 1. And we all know you have to finish Algebra 1 to take Algebra 2. So I'm a little disappointed that there wasn't some sort of summer school set up for those students who need a refresher and kind of to finish the classes that they've started. It sounds like it was just a credit recovery summer school program this year. It was not for those students. So I just wanted to know if there's anything catch-up review that is in the works for those students.
I can look into that. I'm not aware of that. And anecdotally, I will say that we struggled to get enough staff to conduct summer school this year. Usually that's pretty easy for us to do with internal folks who are interested in the extra hours. People looked up at the end of the school year this year and they just said, I need a break. They did some things this year that they've never been asked to do. And so from a staffing perspective, we worked hard to just have our remedial components. But I think it's worth the ask. I don't have the answer about summer options for prerequisite based items. But I will ask.
Any other questions? Any members of the public have questions for Superintendent Langley? No? All right. Thank you. Agenda item number 6, the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that members would like removed? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. Agenda item number 7, public input. Members of
Chair Parks, sorry, if I could, not a set aside item, but we do have Principal Ferrara with us to introduce this principal at Connors.
I apologize. Yes.
We could promote him in to do a quick introduction and introduce Jason Dion, our new assistant principal at Connors. Does he have access or do I need to bring him in? Don, we can't see you yet, but we can hear you. I don't know if that will work.
Sure. I mean, I can see you folks. I don't have anything on my end that says to turn on a camera, so maybe it's just in the system. But I'm glad to be able to do this just audio if that's fine with you, Jake.
1 second. Let's see if it will let you. Did that change anything, Don, from a video
Yeah, it says I'm a panelist now.
Oh, yep.
All right, you're both live in person, remote.
Well, thank you, everyone. It's with great pleasure that I come here this evening to introduce you to Jay Dion. Jay interviewed with us over the last couple of weeks, and he has been put forward as a nominee for the new assistant principal position that's been vacated at Connors Elementary. Jay brings with him 17 years of educational experience as both a teacher and an administrator. And he was most recently Dean of Students at Loringer Memorial School in Old Orchard. In addition to that responsibility, he's also been the site coordinator for 21st Century in Westbrook. He's done consulting work for the Seeds of Independence, which is a nonprofit group out of Brunswick. He's been an aspirations counselor inside the Boston public school system, along with being an instructor and a director of operations. The wealth of knowledge that Jay will bring to Connors is very exciting. As a side note to some of the other things about Jay, he's a strong advocate for the arts. He has a background in the arts. He speaks 3 languages, and I'm convinced that in a pinch, he could speak 4 with German if that was thrown in there. He has an extensive resume of work with equity, diversity, and along with at-risk youth. Those attributes are going to be very well served here at Connors, and we are very excited to welcome Jay onto our administrative team with your approval this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is it Dion or Dion?
Whatever works, whatever works. I think I grew up with a Dion, but now that I'm in Maine, I think it's a lot of Dions. So it's all good for me.
Would you like to speak now or after we vote?
No, I'm just really extremely excited to do the equity work that Lewiston is obviously doing. And I'm just really excited for the opportunity. So I don't want to talk too much, but I'm just very, very excited.
Great, thank you. Any members of the committee have any comments? Sorry.
Jay was part of the consent agenda, so.
So we don't have to vote.
You don't have to vote, so.
All right, well then welcome.
Congratulations.
So much. Principal Ferrara, just in case, my German will definitely need some help to come through in a pinch. So let me know if we have many German speakers, and I'll do some back study.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Congratulations.
you, folks.
Thank you, Don.
Agenda item number 7 is public input. Members of the public may address the school committee for up to 3 minutes on non-agenda items now and on agenda items later. Comments that pertain to staff, personal matters, or a student issue should be directed to the superintendent or the appropriate staff member of Lewiston Public Schools. Public comments shall be directed to the school committee and be brief, not repetitive, and related to the matter at hand. Before starting, please state your name, address, and/or affiliation to Lewiston Public Schools. We already have a member of the public at the podium.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Don't mind me, this is not professional, and I would not normally wear this, but I'm making a statement tonight, and I really can't see your eyes with my hat on, and I should be using nonverbal communication, and I should be able to see your nonverbal communication. Did you know that nonverbal communication is 80 to 90% of communication, and it's not what you say, it's what's going on. And I learned this as a nurse. In my 50 years as a nurse, I've used nonverbal communication. This hat, I don't know how anyone can stand the hat. I also have buds. Did you know that kids and students can put buds under their hoodies and everything without you seeing them? Anyway, I'm really concerned. I'm going to give you a history of caps in the school system. My son was in the school system, and he was in high school in the 90s. Granted, I'm old and everything. And at that time, we had a parent involvement committee at the high school. And this parent involvement committee could work with administration on policies. We did not earn money or anything like that. We weren't like a booster club or anything like that. But we worked with administration, and administration worked with us back then. Well, back in the 90s, for those of you who were younger, it came out that men started wearing hats in public places, in restaurants and everything else, where I learned in my many years that it's not professional and it's not polite. I'm concerned that you want to bring hoodies back and caps back. First of all, this is not professional. We need to teach our students how to dress professionally for the workplace. I would not hire a person that came in with a hoodie over their head or a cap on their head, whether it's a male or female. This is not polite, and we're not teaching our students. If this whole dress code that we have now, actually, there's no dress code. We need to go back to the old-fashioned way of letting kids know that we are the adults and they are the students. And 12-year-olds and 13 and 14 years old brains are not developed. Our brains are not developed till we're 25. If you've taken psychology, and some of you are college graduates, know that. They need instruction and support from adults. And we need to make sometimes decisions as policies and everything for them. Yes, they don't like it or anything like that, but we need to do it, and we're not doing it. And you as a school board, when I was on the school board, administration agreed with us, and we had a code. We had a dress code. And you know, none of the kids objected to it, and none of the teachers objected to it. They followed the policy, and they were told the policy at the beginning of school. And I was told by an administrator just recently, well, we want them to be able to wear caps and be comfortable and wear a hoodie so we can engage them in learning. Since when do we need to wear a cap when I can't see the kids' eyes or anything else in the school? Because I want to see their face, nonverbal communication. Yes, we did it at the beginning because of security, because we couldn't recognize anybody in the school, because at that time, everybody, especially the males, all looked the same with the hats on. And they all wore short hair at that time. And they were not made fun of or anything like that. Or they didn't come to school and say, my hair's a mess or anything like that. I don't know how many times I've gone to work and my hair wasn't the way I wanted to, but I dressed professionally and everything. We are letting our students rule us. And it's about time that we need to get them engaged. I will point out a teacher in this room who's not teaching anymore, and that's Dave Terrio, who was one of the best teachers at the high school. And he knew how to engage his students. And they didn't have to wear hats or hoodies. Go to the high school at the beginning of school year and see what the girls are wearing. They are wearing short shorts way up to there, and I won't say it. Are you gonna let them wear crop tops? Because crop tops are coming back, you know. We are not teaching them. I'm sorry. We are not teaching them the right way. We are the adults. We're letting them run the schools in many, many ways. And this is what I'm seeing. I'm also not seeing respect and politeness from the kids. I'll tell you, I'm a sub teacher at LRTC. Any student that comes into my room will, I don't care if you pass the policy or not, they are not coming to my room with a cap and hood on their forehead. Because I teach CNAs who are going to be nursing students eventually. And I just got done a 2.5 week clinical instruction with our CNAs at LRTC at Clover Manor. And I got to give them, oh, they were beautiful, beautiful young ladies. And they dressed, because we teach our CNA classes at LRTC professionally how to dress when they go to the workplace.
Thank you, Ronnie. Can you
Okay,
wrap it
I'm
up?
sorry.
That's
Yeah.
all right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And sorry I'm dressing with a hat on and having a hat on, but I had to make.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I see a hand. Can I move people over? I've never, usually Karen does that, so I'm not sure.
Just because I'm remote, Megan, I'm trying to follow that as well. So I've just given who I think is the first of mine. Kira,
Hi there. My name is Kira Soramato, and I am a teacher at Lewiston Public Schools. I know that the middle school students had petitioned to have the hats and hoods policy revoked, and I would actually encourage the school committee to consider removing that policy at all schools. I personally have experienced a huge amount of trauma in my life, and for a number of years in my early 20s, the only way that I felt safe enough to leave the house was to use my clothing as a sort of armor. And I wore a hoodie and a baggy jeans, and it was the only way I could control my PTSD and anxiety enough to leave the house. We have a lot of students in our district who have an extensive amount of trauma, and many of them do use their clothing to feel safe. We have many students whose families, due to finances and other issues, particularly boys, they shave their heads because it is easier to maintain their hair. And the feelings of insecurity that I see on my boys' faces when they come to school after their head has been shaved to bald is horrifying. And they're not paying any attention to anything I say. Even though on a normal day, I hope that I'm a pretty engaging teacher. I play, long division rap music and dance around the room like a goofball, and my kids love that. But that is not going to overcome a student who has had his head shaved, and that is all he can think about is how exposed and vulnerable he is. So I understand that there needs to be a little bit of flexibility in that policy, so that if you have a student who is consistently hiding earbuds, or if you have a student who is using their hat to avoid engaging with you in class, then yes, that's an individual behavior issue to be addressed. But by and large, I feel like it's a very outdated policy. It's the policy that I lived under when I was a high school student in Maryland in the 90s. But at this point, I feel that culturally we've moved beyond that. And I hope that the district and the school committee would consider removing those policies at all of our schools in the district. Thank you very much for your time.
I don't see any other hands, Chair Parks. I don't know if there's anyone else there in person for public comment.
Member Potvin.
I really didn't want to do this, but segueing from what's just been presented by members of the public, I wanted to make a motion to suspend the rules to address actions and words presented by Member Whitlow in direct confrontation and disagreement with our own established policies of code of conduct on this board. And I'll go into further detail once if the rules are waived. I'll make that motion.
I would suggest that this should be a personal conversation between you and
I
Ms. Whitlow
will
first,
make
but
this
if there's a
motion.
second-
All right, I'll second for the purpose of discussion.
Any members comment? All right,
So
Ward 1. So we'll now vote on suspending the rules. Okay, Member Majerus Collins.
Well, I wanted to ask Member Potvin if he could potentially elaborate on the logic here so that we could have a more informed vote.
First, we're just voting on whether or not to suspend the rules.
No, I understand that, but
Then there'll be an opportunity to comment on what he has to say further if we do suspend the rules. Otherwise, we don't need to discuss it at this time. Member Damon, can you turn your mic on?
No.
Member Bowden,
No.
Member Majerus Collins, sorry, Ward 3,
yes.
Ward 4,
I'll sustain.
abstain,
Abstain.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
yes,
Ward 7,
Yes.
Ms. Ray is absent. I vote no. Jake, do you have the count?
Yes, I see 4 yeses, which does not meet the two-thirds agenda threshold, I believe.
Thank you. Are there any further comments? Agenda item number 8, to receive an update regarding ELL training. Hillary, sorry. ELL Director Hillary Barber will present.
Hi, everyone. I'm here to give an update on the training that we're going to start this coming year for all staff on best practices for teaching English language learners. Our training plans are well underway. For this first year, we have 2 admin training sessions that will be happening this summer. One the month of July and another one the month of August. Administrators only need to attend one of the 2 trainings. And then we have a strong plan to train and support teachers in their implementation of best practices for English language learners. Teachers will attend 2 training sessions in August. And then we have a plan to incorporate training during our contracted time through for teachers that will go through January. And then after January, we can have a continued plan to look at what teachers need specific support in, what they're saying they need support in, to then provide some specific feedback tailored to their needs. And we will continue training into the subsequent years. We've also completed train the trainer training for our coaches and specific central office staff so that we can train our own staff using the sheltered instruction observation protocol, which is it's a mouthful of a name, but it's essentially the gold standard for best practices for English language learners.
Thank you. Do any members of the committee have questions? Mr. Damon?
Director Barber, were you able to hire your additional assistant director that we had approved earlier in the year?
We just completed interviews actually today. And so we hope to have a candidate selected for a second interview and then brought to the board, would hopefully be at the next meeting.
Any other discussion? Member Majerus Collins?
I don't have any specific questions. I just want to commend you and your entire department on what you're doing. LPS has underserved our ELL staff and students for so long. And I give folks on this committee who supported increased funding for you this year so much credit for doing that and bringing our district towards meeting its legal obligations and frankly, its moral obligations. It's great to hear this update, and I hope that the good work continues.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for presenting.
All right. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Agenda item number 9 is to receive and approve the MOA for food service workers and managers. And
I can default to our negotiations team if they wish. These were MOUs that went through the negotiations team and are being brought before the committee for approval.
Ms. Whitlow or Mr. Damon, would you either of you like to speak on this? No.
Just we were fortunate to reach a very quick and easy settlement with the food service workers. And this is hopefully this will at least show the committee's appreciation to the food service folks and all that they did during the pandemic. So we're glad to have this agreement and have it behind us. So.
Thank you. Yes, definitely underrepresented portion of our employees that deserve this. Member Majerus Collins?
I move that we approve the MOAs as presented.
Is there a second?
Yes, there is. I'll second it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Ward 1.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Member Majerus Collins.
I think it's great that we're doing this. Some of these folks are the most underpaid people in LPS, and I only wish we were able to provide more money, but hopefully going forward, we'll be able to do that in future compensation.
Thank you. Ward 1.
Yes.
Ward 2.
Yes.
Ward 3.
Yes.
Ward 4. Yes. Ward 5.
Yes.
Ward 6.
No.
Ward 7. Oh,
Yes.
Ms. Ray is absent and I vote yes.
Motion passes 6-1.
Thank you. 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-1.
Oh.
Okay. Agenda item number 10, to receive and approve the tech support contract. Superintendent Langlis will also present this.
Yeah, just kind of a similar line for me. The negotiations team have done a lot of work around this new collective bargaining group, and they've moved forward with an agreement, and we're hoping to get the support of the committee tonight to approve it.
Great, thank you. Any discussion? Member Majerus Collins.
I move that we receive and approve the tech support contract as presented.
Is there a second? Seconded by Member Popelant. Any discussion? Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
4,
Yes.
5,
Yes.
6,
No.
7.
Yes.
And I vote yes.
Motion passed 7-1.
Agenda item number 11, to discuss an update regarding teaching and learning of outdoor safety. Superintendent Langless.
So I shared in the packet a memo to try to speak to this, but certainly the tragic loss of a student the day after school got out was a very difficult thing, I think, for our community. But I think it was compounded by the fact that we've lost 2 students in a 3-year window to water-related events, and so we are starting conversations. Our community's invested, but we want to start conversations that expand not just about swimming, but about outdoor safety and outdoor safety learning for all of our students. And for various reasons, and I included some in the memo, just wanted to share that as a city that is connected to a waterway, but also in a state that is, keyed in economically on tourism and travel. I think it's a great idea that we try to build off of our assets and look at how we can grow our outdoor awareness and outdoor safety comprehensively for all of our students. And so just wanted to share with this committee that we've started those conversations, and we will follow up with you as things develop. But some different ideas that have come to the surface, including the potential for water safety courses or working with community partners to offer that. May not be a requirement for school, but maybe an offering, including swimming lessons, curriculum that includes things around scene safety and hazards, a science fair-like event, maybe at a bit of a younger age that focuses on topics for outdoor safety in Maine, so students can focus on an area, but also be exposed to other student areas of focus. Right now, we have the Maine Guide course at the high school. We've been looking for ways to grow that, going back a few years from when I was there. And Instructor Corey Walker has been a leader in those efforts from the high school. I think that's a program that we could look to grow, but maybe grow it downward also. And by downward, I mean by grade. I do think from an aspirations perspective, it could be a good move for us educationally to have students more exposed to topics around Maine at a younger age. Information sessions and pamphlets for families at strategic times, like in the spring when we couldn't get, like we did this year, some warm temperatures while we still had some rivers fluctuating in volume and flow rates, but also cold water that can be a bit surprising. So again, looking to continue that effort, but wanted to update you on where we're at in that conversation around outdoor safety.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Member Majoris Collins.
Superintendent Langless, I appreciate you bringing this issue up. It is critically important, and as we have seen recently, a matter of life and death. My hope would be that the district would aggressively pursue a partnership with Bates College and require all Lewiston Middle School students to learn how to swim in partnership with Bates and using their facilities. I would have every expectation that the college would be supportive of that, and if they weren't, as an alum, I'd be quite upset and communicate that myself. But I think that it's, while the sort of broad spectrum of outdoor safety issues is good and worth pursuing, the key here is that every Lewiston student should learn how to swim in our schools. As an aside, and obviously this committee has no direct control over this other than to express its perspective, but I think it's disgusting that the city is continuing to keep Kennedy Park Pool closed. That's just a slap in the face to folks who live downtown and frankly folks who live throughout the city of Lewiston, and it makes this entire summer period more dangerous for our kids. So I can't even begin to express how angry I am about that. But for our purposes, I hope that we will pursue swimming lessons at the middle school level, ideally through a partnership with Bates, because the pool's right there and they have the resources. So we should move on that, and we should move fast.
Thank you. Any other members care to speak? Member Bowden.
I just want to say that, water safety is important, but it's also a choice. And I don't think that the school district should step in and make it mandatory for students to have to take swim lessons. A lot of times that's a personal choice. And you said yourself on June 7th that this isn't a dictatorship. So I think that's something that students should have the choice to do.
Thank you. Member Majoris Collins.
There are lots of essential skills that we require students to learn in school. Reading, writing, basic civics. But it's sort of baffling to me why swimming wouldn't be one of them. When we've seen this kill 2 Lewiston students in recent years. I believe in public education. I believe in a public education curriculum. And I don't think that the issue here is that students should be able to choose what they learn. I think that students ought to have a greater say in their environment and how they learn things. But we have a responsibility to provide a meaningful education. And the idea that we should just leave it up to families to decide what parts of our education system they choose to engage with or they choose to learn is baffling and frankly strikes me as undermining the very concept of public education.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right. Thank you, Superintendent Langlis. Agenda item 12 is to receive and approve the second reading of policy JHB truancy. Member Ray is set to present this and she hasn't come on yet, and I don't believe she's going to. Are you prepared to do this, Jake? Or
Yeah, I think I can speak to it from a perspective. We did have a first read. I know there was some piece of input and that Alicia was going to take those into consideration. I would take any feedback from the committee for any agreed upon shifts should they not be here on the marked up version. Again, this policy, when it was brought to you the first time around, was adjusted to modify language to align to some new approaches to truancy, but also to clarify our process and procedures internally aligned to law.
so everybody's comfortable on voting on this tonight? All right, any discussion? Ward 1. Oh, sorry, Member Majoris Collins.
Well, we need a motion, so I move that we adopt it.
Thank you.
I'll
Is there a
second it.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion now? Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7,
Yes.
yes.
Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you. Agenda item number 13 is to receive and approve the first reading of the following policies: AC, ACA, ACAA, ACAB, and JB. And Superintendent Langlis is going to cover these.
Yeah, thank you. We, over the last 10 months or so, Lewiston Public Schools has had a team participate with a community of practitioners, which are other school districts. They range from Gorham, Portland, Brunswick. There's a handful of others. And part of that work that we're doing is with the Mid-Atlantic Equity Consortium. And I'm pulling my notes here from the memo that was provided. But this collaborative effort is around equity in all things in schools that are associated. And in this work, we've put a lens on policy, and we've come to examine policies that exist in part, some that exist in, or some components of it in full. And also there's one before you tonight that is actually absent in current LPS policies. And this memo is just, again, I'm pulling off my notes here. We just landed with a draft of policies that took the approach of being written with without too much reference to existing policies. So you're seeing language that is not a markup approach, but a approach of as we continue to grow in our understanding of what we believe is needed, and working with our colleagues across the state, but also internally with our teams. I wanted to share that the exercise of doing this without just modifying existing language was powerful. And it resulted in the drafts that have been shared with you in the folder. And I just wanted you to be aware that we took a different approach. That's why you don't see a redlined option in front of you or version for comparison. perspective. These were worked on again by a group of staff within Lewis Public Schools, and we're putting them before you for a first read. Any comments or questions or edits you may have?
Member Majoris Collins.
Got a few things. So first, we may want to strike the reference to the Gorham School Department included in the non-discrimination / equal opportunity and affirmative action policy, where the Lewiston School Committee is committing to maintaining a workplace, etc. I'm sure that's just an oversight and a sort of cribbing language from Gorham. I would also suggest on that same policy that in the list of designations that we prohibit discrimination against, we should include immigration status. Okay, there was another one on, I think the anti-racism one is good. I wanted to raise the policy JB, transgender and gender expansive students policy proposal. Much of this is really solid, but I would ask, and before we adopt this fully, I would intend to offer an amendment if it wasn't changed, to strike section C subsection 2, parts A through E. It seems directly contradictory to say in section C subsection 1 that an educational institution in no case should require medical or mental health records as proof of a student's gender identity, and then immediately list a variety of ways that an institution would doubt and try to verify a student's gender identity. The reality is that students who are struggling with gender identity questions or who are gender nonconforming are already at incredible risk, as recognized later in the policy, for things like discrimination and bullying. And we have a responsibility to take kids as they are and to affirm their identities as they understand them, rather than, you know, suggesting that their doctor or their passport knows better than they do what their gender identity is. So I would really recommend that we strike the entirety of subsection 2. Other than that, I think that most of that policy is pretty solid.
Thank you. I grabbed some notes on those so I can take a look.
Following up on Member Majoris Collins' statements, the part that says Lewiston Public Schools shall accept a student's assertion of their gender identity when there is consistent assertion of gender identity, for students who may identify as gender fluid, that there may not be consistent assertion of their gender identity. So I don't know if that can be reworded in a way that is accepting of that as well. And maybe that's just too nitpicky of details, but the word consistency, it doesn't really align with the fluidity that some students identify with. Any other comments?
Yeah, I just had a question. Was there anybody that worked on this policy that that was in tune with this language? There was.
Yeah, very much so. We worked shared. Well, Alicia was shared in on the process, but also Aisha Hall was very involved. Who is I would say at the forefront of, you know, everything SEL and inclusion and equity. So as well as that, we do this kind of specific work and conversations in our work groups with the consortium, aligning to state law. That's why sometimes this language can get a little bit back and forth. I want to make sure I rationalize it for you next time accurately. But when, for example, like when Member Majoris Collins mentioned C subpart 2, items A through E, I believe, but I want to verify and give it to you accurately, that that's connected to some language around law, as was the word consistency that Chair Parks just brought up. There's still currently in Maine no permissible way. I'm not sure I phrased that right, but if you, as a student, even at an older age, have made a transition in gender or identify as anything in particular, there's language at the state that will not allow for your student records to be changed. And it gets into different terminology. But so yes, to answer your question, we did have people at the table for this conversation that are sensitive to and familiar with and advocate for these kinds of shifts.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Member Madros Collins?
That's helpful to know, Superintendent Langlis. To the extent that there's language in here that's reflective of state law, but that may not be consistent with what we're looking to accomplish here. While we can't opt out of it necessarily, we can provide for our purposes our definitions. So to Chair Park's point, a consistent expression of gender identity could manifest itself as consistent inconsistency. And so the reality is I would encourage folks to take a closer look at this and see about defining some of these terms in a way that accomplishes the goals that we're looking to accomplish, which is to say to affirm and support students' gender identity as they experience it. And I'm happy to lend my hand to that if that would be helpful. And I know that I had spoken to Member Ray about this, and she said she hadn't had much of an opportunity to do this because it didn't go through the policy subcommittee in the traditional sense. And I suspect that she would also have some helpful perspectives on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other discussion? Mr. Damon?
So are you proposing that we table part of this until it comes back amended?
Because it's a first read, and I think that I personally am supportive of the general sentiment in all of these policies. I just think that there are specific changes that I'd like to see before we enact it and make it part of our policy manual. I'm comfortable with passing a first read tonight, and then letting the administration come back with minor edits. But if other folks want to table, I see the logic in that too.
I feel comfortable exploring these and bringing something back to you for a second read. And if there's a need to not approve it at the second read, we could certainly go back to the drawing board. But I'll leave that to the committee to decide.
Is everybody here comfortable voting on all of these tonight? All right. Can we motion to accept the first reading of all of these, or do we have to do them individually?
As presented in the agenda, it's one item. So I believe that you can, but you can also, as a committee, separate them out if you wish.
Member Madros Collins?
I move that we receive and accept for the purposes of a first read the policy AC, policy ACA, policy ACAA, policy ACAB, and policy JB as presented in our packet.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Any further discussion? Member Damon? Ward 1?
Yeah.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
4?
Yes.
5?
Yes.
6?
Yes.
7?
Yes.
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0 as a first read.
Thank you. Agenda item number 14, to receive subcommittee updates, first from the Finance Committee, Member Potvin.
So the Finance Committee was put on hold pending administrative review of all the finances so that whatever we would be talking about, we would have the most accurate numbers. I believe we're at a good point at this stage, and it's just a matter of getting with Jake when he rehabs and getting the committee back together. So for now, there's been no activity, but they have been able, the administrative part's been able to finish their financial work. So we'll have that as soon as we have the next meeting.
Great, thank you. Facilities Committee, Member Damon.
We really have nothing to report at this time.
Thank you. Curriculum Committee, Member Majoris Collins.
We have no report.
Policy Committee, Ms. Ray is absent, but I believe we haven't had a meeting since we last provided an update anyway. So we'll check in with her again at the next meeting. And the negotiations, Member Whitlow.
We are in the middle of the certified professionals contract.
Great, thank you. Agenda item number 15 is a report from our city council representative, so we will skip that. Agenda item number 16 is a report from school committee chair, and I do not have anything to report on tonight. Agenda item number 17, report from the superintendent.
Yeah, I have just a few things. First of all, I want to thank the school committee and also the public for bearing with me. Didn't expect to have a knee procedure and definitely didn't expect to have it moved up due to a tear in my knee. And I have found it interesting that there's some rumors out there on how it made the paper. I have no idea, but I'm going to go with it. I'm not going to say how I did it, but maybe we could start a new rumor and say it was skydiving. I don't know if you've seen the paper or the commentary about it, but I really don't think it was news. From a business perspective, I should be back in the office unless I have any setbacks at some point. I would say early to mid next week, pending the doctor's orders. Short of that, I'm doing all I can remotely. We've started with our Ad Hoc Poverty Committee. That's a mayoral committee. And I'll continue to get you updated. We're just getting started, but I'll keep you updated throughout the process. But I think that's going to be some good work. There's a lot of good community partners involved with a commitment around poverty, education, and supporting our youth. So I look forward to that. Funding, hiring, and staffing. We're still working on our eSurf submittals. We have a substantial approval for eSurf 3, and that's an important detail for us so we can start to execute things. It's been a bit of a cumbersome process for what they require for write-ups and applications and language and budgets and quotes and whatnot, but we're getting there. Staffing levels, we have posted numerous things. Hiring is happening at a pretty rapid pace. I remain concerned about making sure or having the ability to get all those seats filled. So if you're talking to anyone who wants to be involved in education, please send them our way. We, as well as every other school district, is looking to fill those positions. In our business and HR spaces, our hiring levels are getting closer to, or staffing levels are getting closer to where they should be, so that those two key components to our work have some depth to them. Had a lot of people that have really stepped up, worked a lot of long hours in a lot of ways that the pandemic has put new pressures on already a high-paced position. So I thank them for their work. As I mentioned earlier, summer programs have begun, and there's a whole range of things from some CTE programming, some summer youth programming around work and shadow and resume building, things of that nature, STEM specific things at different schools, and a lot of teaching and learning has already taken place, and the kids are really enjoying themselves. And I got some messaging last weekend, and just to put a bug in your ear, and I had to message out, but with the high heat numbers, I don't know that we've ever canceled school in the summer. I did watch that very closely all weekend and try to keep a pulse on things. Our facilities director, Josh Bro, kept sending me temperatures and anticipated temperatures, both live and predicted in our various buildings. So we do want to be mindful of workplace conditions. I believe the space you're in now, the AC is back on. That was actually fixed just recently. They didn't have it Monday and Tuesday. So it's good to have AC where we have it, but a lot of our facilities don't have it at all in those teaching and learning spaces. So we'll be mindful. And the reason I share that is to bring it to light, but also to make sure you know if we did close summer school for weather-related or heat-related purposes, we do have requirements around our summer schools because of the way in which we fund them. The program is this summer, and so if we need to, we would put that day on the end of summer school, so it would maintain all the compensation, it would maintain the number of days in session, what have you, in all places except for the high school, which is remediation, and as students complete, they are kind of off the hook. I just want to make sure you're aware of that, as it is part of a conversation, and it's certainly possible to happen. And from where I sit, I was very close this weekend in the consideration of postponing summer school because they hadn't started yet. But we decided to go forward, and it worked out okay with provisions like water and ice and things of that nature where we could. Expansion is on pace. I hope when you either came in or when you go, you can drive by the expansion. You can see how it's the building itself is closing in, and that's going really well. Not too long from now, another item you'll see the lights going up on the baseball field. That's an exciting thing that's been in the works for some time, and that's coming to actually happen. And of course, just to share it loud for those who may not have seen it or heard it, there was a good news from the city as the mayor shared it, that the valuation came in higher than anticipated, which will cause people's tax rates to decrease. And I as a member of the city, someone who lives here and pays taxes here and works here and raises my children here, I'm supportive of that effort. But I also know that it's made for some challenging reflections and spots because of how hard we worked through the budget cycle process. And so I look forward to next year and seeing what we're able to do to support our kids without having to lean too hard on relief dollars that will absolutely stop in a couple of years because they have a stop point. Other than that, that's all I have for updates.
Thank you. Agenda item number 18 is school committee community announcements. It occurred to me after I passed on the chair update that I probably should have said this at that time, but as the newly nominated member of the Lewiston Public Health Committee, there's currently a campaign going right now to encourage vaccination rates in our community. And the Dottie at City Hall is requesting that anyone who is interested in participating, take a photo of themselves holding up a sign that says why they've chosen to get vaccinated, what has moved them to make that decision, and send it in to her, and she'll be pushing it out to all of the community partners and putting it on the City of Lewiston Facebook page and promoting it in other ways. So if anyone is interested in participating, just write up why you have chosen to become vaccinated and send that to Dottie. And yeah, like a piece of paper. That's the My Why campaign. So just write My Why and then put your reason why you chose to get vaccinated, and send that to her, and she'll promote that among the community. Any other community announcements? Member Bowden?
So I'm a varsity basketball mom, and I just wanted to give you guys an update real quick on the field trips that you approved in your last meeting. Both the boys and girls varsity basketball teams successfully traveled to Pennsylvania and back, and had a really great weekend. I believe the boys were just this past weekend. The girls were a couple weekends ago. The girls went 3-3 for the weekend with some really great competition. Couple games went into overtime. It was fun stuff to watch. We had a couple parents there chaperoning. So just want to extend a thank you to them and to Coach Gibson for taking the girls. And it was a 10.5-hour drive, and they had a great time. And it sounds like the boys did really well. Also, I don't know their record. I feel like I heard they lost maybe one game, so they did really great as well. So just an all-around successful field trip, team bonding experience for both teams. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for letting them attend those camps.
Thank you. Member Hawkins.
Yesterday there was a Touch a Boat event at the pop-up garden at 115 Bartlett Street. Sorry, I wasn't able to get more information out to about that to people ahead of time. It was really well attended. A lot of kids were very excited to see all the different types of boats. We had everything from one of the really long boats they use for rowing professionally. And we also had a skiff similar to the ones that the wildlife services use on our lakes and rivers. I wanted to put a bug out as well to watch for the River Fest that is going to be happening this year. We're very excited at Healthy Neighborhoods because one of our partners, Healthy Homeworks, the bed building group, is also doing home ownership, but they're also helping with the rowing program that's going to be happening at Riverfest. So things are starting to happen in the community. The fence is going up at the corner of Bartlett and Pine, so there will be a place there. It's a little bit safer for children to play things like soccer and frisbee not have them fly into the street so much. And as usual, I am at the Pug every Thursday from 1 to 4. If anybody wants to come down and interact with the community or knows of a group that needs to get word out about what they're doing, send them my way.
Great, thank you.
No, not a pub, Pug, pop-up garden.
Any other community announcements? Agenda item number 19, future agenda items. Member Beaublanc.
We all remember how contentious the budget proposal was with the city council. And I still have a hard time grasping big numbers, but the revaluation has had a positive effect, as we know, on the taxpayers. I'd like to know clearly from people that can explain it much better than I can understand it, apparently, how this impacts the school committee in future budgets. I realize our budget is set here, but there's been big concerns about the cliff. Again, if we could address that, and I could just get a nice little synopsis of what it means. I did not catch your presentation. I saw your picture in the paper at the podium. Thank you for representing us, but the news report did not go into detail. Thank you.
Jake, do you think, sorry, go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, I could touch on it quickly, but I do think it's worth it, not only in the short term, but the midterm and long term, that we're having more conversations with city staff who can certainly chime in on this. So I will reach out to them to fulfill that request, Member Beaupont. I will say, as the valuation goes up, essentially entities that have more value pay a bigger portion of their share. So for example, I know that much of the conversation was around the power transmission and likely connected to the substation work. But as CMP or other companies invest in their own sites, it improves or increases their property value, which makes them more responsible or appropriately responsible for their share of their tax. And by doing so, the tax burden for other property owners, like homeowners and things like that, goes down because the total doesn't change. There's just more coming in from a different entity. So that reduces our tax burden, but it doesn't change the budget, which is a nice thing if you're looking to reduce taxes. And I know that brought upon some different thinking and challenges for all of us who worked through that budget process. The other thing I want to add, and I shared an email, but I want to say so publicly, that the state's effort around the 55%, and it doesn't change our total allocation locally. So we still have that number from the state. I know you've heard me talk about the ED 279, but the total number from our support doesn't change. This year we had conversations about how the local share, which is kind of pre-allocated by the state's projections, had been reduced by $244,000, which reduced tax burden here through efforts of the state prior to this 55%. This new conversation, if approved, will further reduce the local burden. And so essentially the same amount of money coming into Lewiston Public Schools from those areas, but more from the state, less from the city. So we don't get a net increase, it just comes from different places. But because it's not coming from local, it will, again, if approved and carried out, and I anticipate it will reduce the burden on the city for that portion that the state is fulfilling. And so we kind of have a double-edged sword here, where the local valuation has increased, and I would anticipate it to again, as long as that transmission project continues and other economic development happens. So what that means for us is, without asking a homeowner to contribute more directly through their city tax, because we're paying for it all in one way or form, shape or form, but without being paid through their city tax rate explicitly, it would make more money available if the tax rates were what they were established to be, because of different money coming from other places. And I'm open to questions around that if anybody has any, but I do think we should have more conversation as we move forward for next year's budget process, for sure.
Member Madras Collins.
I might suggest on that the finance subcommittee take a closer look. And I also would like to see this committee. I know that some members of this committee have already expressed perspectives on this, but but we're impacted by the city's refusal to bring tax rates into line with reality. And so I think that we should consider taking that as a formal stand with the committee.
Any other comments? Member Putman?
Jake, two questions. One, did the city, given that we had to cut our request, and given that the city's going to realize the tax decrease immediately, was there any discussion about revisiting the bottom lines and the budgets in terms of reinstatement of some of the line items to a reasonable degree?
There was not for the FY22 cycle. I do think that there was an optimistic tone that without getting into city tax rate, without reaching into an individual person's home who might feel like this is going up $1 per 1,000 in my mill rate, I can't sustain that. There was some optimism around that dollar could be returned next year or to some extent, without it having such a massive impact on a taxpayer who would be familiar with a prior tax. I don't know if I said that well, but if I saved $1 per 1,000 this year in a budget cycle, I might not feel so bad about next year if it goes back to that same place where we were. And if we do so, it would mean for slightly more funding. I still have concerns about how much more funding. But.
Yeah. The second piece, when you've had meetings with DOE and other districts, has there been discussion about addressing the loss of student population within the districts that it's going to directly impact DPS funding? Has there any been discussion on how the state's going to address that?
There has been discussion around that, and we're going to use relief funding to try to get students back, connected to school, and other supports that this committee has supported and allowed to move forward. But I would say that the conversation with the Department of Education in around the ED 279, which essentially is just the state says, here's how much you get for different things in your subsidy. And it used to be specifically related to the enrollment numbers at places at different grade levels. And one of the adjustments that has been discussed and modified is using a ratio at the elementary levels because of the number of high school students statewide that chose different programs, moved elsewhere, disengaged with school because of the pandemic, or didn't have the supports of it because of the pandemic. So essentially they prorated some things so that it wouldn't be such a large impact on school districts. But it's definitely still a concern, something we're keeping a close eye on, because every student that doesn't attend, regardless of that ratio that helps adjust things, it will have a negative impact on our bottom line from the state subsidy, as they project. And then we turn in our enrollment documentation and our reporting, and that's how we start building in our drawdowns or reimbursements. So Member Parvin, you make a good point that those numbers are not necessarily concrete numbers. They still involve an annual cycle of actual enrollments, actual students and their levels of need, and a reimbursement cycle for subsidy.
Any other comments? Any other future agenda items? Oh, go ahead, Mr. Putnam.
Yeah, I'd like a review of the school committee's code of conduct and understanding what is involved in it and how we address it.
Thank you. Member Madras Collins.
We received a presentation at our last meeting from a couple of middle school teachers speaking on behalf of what I understood from members Ray and Physic to be a large number of students. And then obviously we heard tonight vastly different perspectives on the issue of hats and hoods. I just want to make sure that we take that up in a timely fashion and afford the public an opportunity to weigh in and then go through a deliberative process and make a determination about that, because the worst thing to do is just to sort of have an issue dangling indefinitely. So let's set a time. Let's let people know ahead of time. We're going to have a discussion to make a decision about this, and then let's go ahead and do that.
The dress code policy. Member Bowden?
I'm not really sure how much of this is our responsibility as opposed to the superintendent's responsibility. But we have 4 meetings, if I'm correct in my research. We have 4 more meetings until the first day of school and 62 days until the first day of school. And I want to make sure that we have a reopening plan ready to go before like the week before hits, like what happened last year. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page with that and that we can have like a plan in place.
Yeah, that's a great point. One of the nice things this year is that we have that guidance in mid-June with some clarifications that have come out since then. That whereas last year we got them to start August, was when the state released the guidelines that we had to then respond to and plan for. So, yeah, I totally agree, and we are working on that, and we will have that before you. And that's not in isolation. Also been working with the LEA and getting input from parents and others around that work.
Any other future agenda items? Yes. Agenda item number 20 is to enter into executive session to discuss a legal matter in accordance with 1 MRSA 4056E. Is there a motion?
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Did you hear either one of them, Jake?
I heard Member Damon. I didn't hear the second.
Member Bowden?
Second.
Thank you.
Member Majoros Collins?
I'm just raising this because there is a small possibility that I missed it, but were we provided with a confidential memo on this or no?
I believe so, yes.
Yes.
I didn't see one. If somebody's in a position to make me aware that I overlooked it, I'll vote yes, but otherwise, with no information, I'm gonna have to vote no on this.
Scrolling through my email, but I know I saw it at some point.
I know I'm new, but I didn't get anything either.
Jake, can you find it? I seem to recall a discussion about it being sent out. I think maybe we had the discussion and between Sue and Cheryl splitting that duty, it may have not gotten sent out.
I would be curious if you have something from Sue or something from me, and I'm trying to check my own email here too.
I believe it was sent out before this meeting was originally scheduled for last Monday, but now I'm not finding it. What date did you have one, Paul? Jake, are you able to find it?
I'm not seeing it as an item I sent to you. I know that there's an item that exists for it. It is regarding an ongoing legal matter that we have discussed prior.
Okay. Any further discussion before we vote? Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
No.
Ward 4,
Yes.
5,
Yes.
6,
Yes.
7,
Yes.
yes. Vote. I was gonna wait for Jake to call the vote, but
Yeah, I was muted. I was motion to enter into executive session at 7:15 PM passes 7 to 1.
thank you. We will now